The moment Eden Blake stepped into Iron Meadow, she knew her life was about to change. But she never expected the crushing words, "I sent for help, not a wife." The tall, broken cowboy before her had just destroyed every dream she'd carried for 1,000 miles. Yet this cruel rejection would be the start of the greatest love story the frontier had ever seen. Stay with me to the end and comment with your city so I can see how far this story has traveled. The stagecoach lurched to a sudden stop, throwing Eden forward in her seat. Dust swirled in, coating her already tired traveling dress in another layer of grime. She pressed a hand to the dirty window, getting her first look at her new home. Iron Meadow, Montana was a small collection of weathered buildings. It looked tiny and lonely against the endless prairie grass and distant mountains. The town had maybe 24 structures in all: a general store, a saloon, and a few houses that looked like they were barely standing. The driver's rough voice called out, "Iron Meadow, miss. End of the line." Those words, "end of the line," settled over Eden like a heavy blanket. This was the end of her old life of poverty after her father's death in Philadelphia. She remembered working her fingers raw and still not having enough money for food. With trembling hands, she smoothed her skirts and prayed this was a new beginning. The door swung open and she stepped down onto the dusty main street. The afternoon sun was relentless, and she shielded her eyes as she looked around. A few of the townspeople had stopped their daily chores to watch her arrival. There was an older woman sweeping a porch and two men loading a wagon. A group of children even stopped their game to stare at the stranger. Eden was used to the stares she got because of her worn-out clothing. She'd faced pity in the hard gazes of men who saw her as an opportunity, but these stares felt different. They were just curious and a little reserved. The driver hauled her single, battered trunk down, setting it beside her with a thud. "I'm meeting a Mr. Jonas Hale," she said, hoping she sounded confident. "The Hale place?" The driver's friendly expression suddenly vanished. "That's a ways out. I'm surprised he'd send for—" He stopped himself before saying any more. A moment later, the stagecoach pulled away, leaving Eden all alone with her trunk. She clutched the letters from Jonas Hale, the paper now soft from being read so many times. They were not love letters, filled with sweet promises. His words were practical, an offer of marriage for help on his ranch. Eden didn't want romance, just at a safe place to call home. All she hoped for was a little honesty and perhaps some kindness. As she waited, she could feel the entire town watching her every move. The woman with the broom had stopped sweeping just to stare. A group of men whispered to each other, occasionally glancing her way. But Eden simply stood a little taller and lifted her chin. She had lost her mother at 12 and cared for her dying father. She had journeyed over 1,000 miles to get here. A few curious looks from strangers were not going to break her. Then she heard hoofbeats. A tall rider on a dark horse was coming down the street. The townspeople grew quiet, and Eden knew this was Jonas Hale. He stopped his horse right in front of her, and she got a good look at him. He was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders and a weathered face. His blue-gray eyes were intense, and they locked right onto her. But what she saw in them was not welcome. It was pure shock. Her heart began to sink as his shock turned into clear disappointment. She watched him struggle with his emotions, confusion, then obvious regret. Finally, he swung down from his horse with an easy grace. He took a few steps toward her, but then stopped, keeping his distance. "You're Eden Blake?" he stated, more than asked. "Yes," she said, keeping her voice strong. "Mr. Hale?" He gave a sharp nod, looking everywhere but at her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough and full of strain. "There's been a misunderstanding." Those simple words hit her like a physical blow. The ground felt like it was shifting beneath her feet. She had never fainted in her life, but for a moment she thought she might. "I don't understand." But a cold fear told her that she understood perfectly. Jonas took off his hat, unable to look her in the eye. "The letters," he stammered. "The arrangement. I thought—" "Were you expecting someone else?" Eden's voice was suddenly flat, all the hope gone. "I was expecting someone older," he rushed out, gesturing at her helplessly. "A widow, perhaps. Someone looking for a practical partnership. Not someone so young." The world seemed to shrink to just the two of them on that dusty street. "I see," she whispered, though she did not. She was 23, not a child. "How does my age change our agreement?" she asked, meeting his eyes. What she saw there chilled her. It was a mixture of guilt and a strange fear. "It changes everything," he replied quietly. "Mr. Hale," Eden pleaded, her composure cracking. "I traveled for 2 weeks to get here. I sold everything I owned. I have nowhere else to go." A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. "I'll pay for your ticket home tomorrow. You can stay at the boarding house for the night." "No," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. Jonas stopped, surprised. "No," she repeated firmly. "You sent for a bride. You made promises. I came here in good faith, based on your word." "I'm not asking for love," she confessed, her voice trembling with desperation. "Our arrangement was meant to be practical. I can cook, clean, and I am a hard worker." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "You do not understand." "Then explain it to me," she demanded, taking a step closer. Her pride was forgotten. "Tell me what is so wrong with me. Why would you send me back without even giving me a chance?" Jonas just looked at her, his eyes full of an old, deep pain. "There is nothing wrong with you," he whispered. "That is the problem." Before she could understand, he grabbed her trunk and headed for his horse. "Come on," he said. "It is getting late, and it is a long ride to the ranch." "Wait," she hurried after him, her mind spinning. "Are you taking me with you?" "Just for tonight," he said, not looking at her as he secured the trunk. "Tomorrow I will bring you back to town for your ticket east. But I am not leaving you standing in the street, and I will not put you in Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, giving every gossip in 3 counties something to talk about." It was not the welcome she had dreamed of, but it was a chance. Eden moved toward the horse. "I do not know how to ride," she said quietly. "You are sitting, not riding," Jonas replied gruffly, pulling her up behind him. She had to wrap her arms around his waist as the horse moved. She could feel his strength, and surprisingly, it brought a small comfort. He had not sent her away. She had until the morning. For a woman like Eden, a small chance was more than enough. It was an opportunity to fight for the life she wanted. As they rode away from the town, she made a silent promise to herself. She had one night to show Jonas she was not afraid of his secrets. She had traveled 1,000 miles and was not ready to give up. They rode in silence for nearly an hour, with only the sound of the wind. Eden carefully memorized the winding path along the creek. They climbed a gentle hill that opened into a only valley. When she finally saw the ranch, her first thought was that it looked sad. The main house was large and solid, but it looked forgotten. The paint was peeling, and a broken shutter hung at a strange angle. Weeds grew where a beautiful garden might have been. It was a working ranch, but it had clearly seen better days. Jonas helped her down without a word, his touch brief and businesslike. He carried her trunk to the house, and Eden followed him inside. The inside of the house felt just as neglected as the outside. They entered a large room that was both a kitchen and a living space. A huge stone fireplace stood cold and empty against one wall. Everything was tidy, but the home had no warmth, no sign of life. "The guest room is this way," Jonas said, leading her down a hallway. The room was small, with a plain iron bed and a simple dresser. A single window looked out over the prairie as the sun began to set. He set her trunk down. "Supper is at 6, he said, not meeting her eyes. As he turned to leave, Eden took a deep breath. "Jonas, please, please just tell me why you changed your mind," Eden asked quietly. For the first time, Jonas truly looked at her, studying the weariness and the strength in her face. He saw her dark hair, her determined eyes, and the unbreakable will behind them. "You're alive," he finally said, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't place. "You are young and you are full of hope," he struggled to explain, "and I cannot be responsible for what happens to that hope here." Before she could question him, he turned and left, closing the door softly behind him. Eden stood alone, looking at her tired reflection in the dusty mirror. Her dress was wrinkled and her hair was a mess, but her eyes held a stubborn spark. He wasn't rejecting her. He was trying to protect her. Something terrible had happened to him on this isolated ranch. It had hurt him so badly he felt he had to keep everyone away. She watched from the window as he walked to the barn, his shoulders heavy with a burden. He was a broken man hiding behind walls he had built around his heart. Eden understood grief, and she knew he was not a monster. He was just a man who believed he was a danger to anyone who got close. This was not about her being unwanted. It was about him feeling unworthy. And Eden Blake was not one to give up on someone who needed help. She turned from the window and started to unpack her small trunk with purpose. She only had until the next morning. It was not much time, but she decided it would have to be enough. Supper was just as awkward as she expected. Jonas served a simple meal of beef and potatoes in complete silence. He placed her plate on the table without ceremony, as if feeding a stranger. Eden decided to break the tension. "How long have you owned this ranch?" He looked up, surprised. 12 years. I built the house 14 years ago. She tried again. "Do you run this whole place by yourself?" "I have 2 men who help with the cattle," he answered, his voice flat. In the soft lamplight, she noticed a small scar above his eyebrow. His hands were calloused from years of hard, lonely work. She realized he would be a handsome man if he ever allowed himself to smile. "I am a good cook," Eden said softly. "Actually, I am a very good one. My mother taught me before she passed. I can run a household and manage the books. I am also strong and I do not get tired easily." Jonas carefully set down his fork. "Miss Blake, Eden." He seemed to have trouble saying her name. "This is not about your skills. I believe you." "Then what is this about?" He stood up quickly from the table. "I sent for practical help. Someone who needed a home, and I needed help with the house. A simple, fair trade. And I am offering you that," he finished. "Then why are you sending me away?" Eden asked calmly. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because I cannot have someone here who wants more than I can offer. I do not expect you to do it." He turned to her, a desperate look in his eyes. "Maybe you do not see it yet, but you do. You came here hoping for a new start, for something better than what you left. I see you looking around, already imagining how you could make this place a home. And you do not want that?" Eden stood up facing him. "Are you saying you have given up?" "I already built something," he said, his voice harsh and angry. "I built a good life here, and I watched it burn down right in front of me. So no, I am not building again. I am only trying to survive." The confession hung in the air. Eden saw the raw pain on his face before he could hide it again. She could see he regretted saying it. "What happened?" she asked in a gentle voice. Jonas turned away. "That is not your concern." "Is it not? If I need to understand why you are sending me away." "There is nothing to understand." His voice was flat and empty now. "I made a mistake writing those letters. I thought I was ready for company, but I am not. That is all." He left the room without another word. Soon after, Eden heard the front door open and close. She saw him walking quickly toward the barn. He was running, she thought, running away from her and from the memories she brought up. Eden slowly cleared the dinner plates, washing each one with care. The kitchen felt too large and quiet. She imagined it filled with happy chatter and the smell of baking bread. But now it was just an empty shell, just like the man who lived in it. She was worn out from the long trip and the difficult conversation. But she did not go to her room. Instead, she lit another lamp and began to explore the house. The main room had almost no personal items, just a pair of work gloves, a rifle, and a small bookshelf. The shelf held about 12 practical books on ranching and a worn-out Bible. But on the mantel over the cold fireplace, Eden found something that made her stop. It was a photograph. The faded photo showed a younger, happier Jonas. He stood with his wife and 2 small children. There was a boy of 6 and a little girl of 4. Eden was studying the joy in his eyes. Just then Jonas walked through the door. He saw her looking at the photograph on the mantel. "They died," he said, his voice completely raw. "It was a fire 7 years ago." Eden whispered, "I am so incredibly sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back," he said, his voice breaking. She saw the guilt that was eating him alive. "You feel you don't deserve to be happy again." "I failed them," he whispered. "It was my job to protect them. So what right do I have to try again?" "Everyone has the right to live," she began softly, but he stopped her. "You don't understand. Some failures are just too big to be forgiven." "That's not true," she pleaded. "It is for me. Get some rest now. We will leave at dawn." He left and she stood alone in the quiet, heavy room. She could feel his grief like a physical presence. She knew she should probably leave and start over. But she also knew she could not give up on him. Not now, not after coming all this way. He was not just grieving. He was dying on the inside. He was suffocating under a mountain of guilt. Eden decided she would be the one to help him heal. That night, she lay awake for a very long time. She knew Jonas was somewhere in the house awake too. Tomorrow would come, and a choice would change everything. Fight for a chance she never knew she wanted. Outside, the stars watched over them, two lonely people under the same Montana roof. Eden knew healing could happen, but it often came as a surprise. She just wondered if Jonas would let himself be surprised too. As dawn broke, Eden's mind was anything but gentle. She had barely slept. The prairie sounds kept her awake, her mind racing with plans. She had thought of every possible argument to convince Jonas to let her stay. But the morning light brought a brand new idea. It was a decision that even surprised her. She would not argue. She was not going to beg. She was going to show him her worth. She got ready quickly, pulling her hair back with purpose. She put on a simple, sturdy work dress instead of her traveling clothes. The house was completely silent. Jonas was still in his room. Perfect. This gave her the time she needed. She went straight to the kitchen. With practiced hands, she quickly built a fire in the clean stove. Then she explored the pantry. Jonas was a very organized man. She found flour, sugar, and plenty of coffee. There were also eggs and bacon. It was more than enough for a good breakfast. She started working right away, mixing dough for biscuits. Soon, bacon was sizzling in a skillet. The familiar work calmed her down. By the time Jonas's door opened, the biscuits were already in the oven, and the wonderful smell of fresh coffee filled the entire kitchen. Jonas stood in the doorway looking like he just woke up. He stopped in his tracks. He stared at her, completely confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Making breakfast," she said, without even looking up from the stove. "I was going to take you to town." His voice trailed off. "After we eat," Eden finished for him calmly. "No point traveling hungry." "The coffee is ready," she added. She could feel him watching her. He was completely uncertain. He had prepared himself for tears, not this. He never expected to find a woman calmly making breakfast in his kitchen. After a moment, Jonas poured coffee from the pot on the stove. He watched her. "You did not have to do this." "I know," she said, easily cracking eggs into the pan. "How do you like your eggs?" "Over easy," he replied. She flipped them perfectly. She pulled golden biscuits from the oven and quickly assembled 2 plates. Eden placed a plate in front of him, and a tense silence hung between them. Jonas stared at the food for a long moment before finally picking up his fork. The first bite of a warm biscuit made his eyes widen in genuine surprise. He looked at her with wonder. "This is my mother's recipe," Eden explained softly. "She always said the secret was not to overwork the dough." Jonas ate quickly at first, like a man who was only trying to survive. His movements were efficient, as if food was just fuel, not something to enjoy. But then he slowed down, savoring it. "I cannot remember my last real breakfast," he admitted. The words were quiet, almost to himself. Eden's heart ached for his 7 years of just getting by. "It is a good way to start the day," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "My father always said a good breakfast sets the tone for everything." Jonas looked up, remembering her letter. "Your father passed, did he not?" "Yes, last year from pneumonia," she said, her voice steady despite her sadness. "He was a good, honest man who worked as a clerk in Philadelphia. When he became ill, I nursed him for 3 months at our boarding house. But when the rent was due after he passed, I had nothing left. That is when I placed the advertisement," Eden said, poking at her own eggs. "First, I searched for work, but there were no good jobs in the city. I worked in a laundry and as a maid, but the pay was barely enough to live on. I was growing desperate when I saw your notice." "And you thought I was your salvation?" he asked. His tone was not mocking, just tired. "I thought it was a chance," she replied, meeting his eyes. "That is all I have ever wanted, Mr. Hale. Just one chance." He finished his coffee, a new look of respect on his face. "That was a fine meal. The best I have had in years, to tell the truth." He turned to her, his eyes full of regret. "But it changes nothing. I am hitching the wagon. We leave for town within the hour." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stood up, her mind racing for a solution. "A decent breakfast?" After that, she would be back in Iron Meadow with nothing. Her only option was the train ticket Jonas had bought for her. "Unless, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice calm, "I have a business proposition for you." He paused, looking wary. "Please, just hear me out." She put down her plate to face him. "You said you needed practical help, someone to manage the house. You still need that, do you not?" He reluctantly agreed. "I suppose, but then let me stay," she cut in. "Not as a wife, but as a housekeeper. An employee. Give me just 1 month. Let me prove I can do the work you need." Jonas shook his head. "It would not be proper." "Then we can make it proper," she replied quickly. "Just tell people I am your cousin from back east, here to help you. Or maybe your late wife's younger sister. Any respectable story will work. People will believe it." "No," he said, but his voice was weak. Eden saw her chance. 1 month. That is 4 weeks to show you I can run this house. If you still want me to leave, then I will go without any argument." He crossed his arms, looking troubled. "Why, Taisai? Why fight so hard to stay here?" The question was blunt, but Eden did not look away. "Because," she said, "I have nowhere else to go. I am so tired of running from one bad place to another." She chose her next words carefully. "And because I think you need help. More than you are willing to admit, and I am stubborn enough to give it." For a moment, he almost smiled. Stubborn is one word for it. He stood quietly, and she could see the battle in his eyes. His need for help was fighting against his deep-seated fear. Finally, he let out a long sigh. 1 month. You will do the work and keep to yourself. He struggled for words. "And do not try to fix things that cannot be fixed. When the 4 weeks are up, you go." "Agreed," Eden said, feeling a wave of relief. "I will ride into town and tell Mrs. Henderson you are my late wife's cousin. That should keep the gossip down." He stopped at the door. "And Miss Blake, do not make me regret this." "I will not," she promised. "You have my word." After Jonas left, Eden stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding hard. She had won herself a little time. Now she had a promise to keep. She had 4 weeks to convince Jonas Hale that letting her stay was the right decision. Eden saw the kitchen as her responsibility now. The stove was dirty, the cupboards a mess, and the floor needed a deep scrub. So she rolled up her sleeves and got right to work. By noon, the entire kitchen had been completely transformed. Every surface gleamed. She even sorted through a crate of old potatoes, saving what she could. Outside, she found a small herb garden that was overgrown with weeds, but could still be saved. When Jonas returned, he stopped in the doorway, surprised. "I made us some sandwiches," Eden said, pointing to the table. He walked in slowly, amazed by the changes. "You have been busy." "I am here to be useful," she replied, pouring him some coffee. They ate in a comfortable silence, unlike the one at breakfast. Jonas looked around as if seeing the room for the first time. "I'm riding into town," he finally said. "Need anything?" "Yeast and maybe some vegetable seeds for the garden," she asked. Jonas just nodded. "I will see what I can find." While he was gone, Eden continued to clean the rest of the house. In Jonas's room, she found only the bare essentials: a simple bed, a dresser, and one single chair. It was the room of a man who had stripped his life of any joy. There was nothing there to remind him of what he had lost. Later, she entered a small room that had clearly belonged to a child. A broken rocking horse sat sadly in the corner. Jonas appeared in the doorway just as she was deciding what to do. "I am so sorry," she said, feeling like she had invaded his privacy. "It is fine," he said, but his voice was tight with pain. "This was my daughter's room. Her name was Sarah." Eden saw the deep sadness in his eyes. "You are here to help," he said. "The whole house." Then he handed her a package. "I got your yeast and seeds. The store owner said it was late for most vegetables, but he gave me some lettuce and radish seeds. He also said these herb starts would grow better than seeds." Eden took the bag, surprised by his gesture. "I can pay you back when—" But Jonas cut her off. "You do not have wages. Our deal was room and board." "These are for the house," he stated, then walked away before she could reply. Eden looked at the package. It felt heavier than just seeds. He had actually listened to her. He even bought things she had not asked for. The herbs showed a kindness she had not expected. Maybe there was hope here after all. The following days settled into a comfortable routine. Jonas was up before dawn for ranch work. He didn't manage the house, quietly and efficiently transforming the neglected space. She cooked hearty meals and packed lunches for the men. Slowly, she erased years of neglect from every corner of the home. Jonas rarely spoke, but he noticed everything. She saw him glance at the clean windows. He would stare at the wildflowers she placed on the table. The tension in his shoulders began to fade. A few days later, she found him watching the sunset on the back porch. She had come to check on her new garden and did not want to disturb him. But before she could slip away, he spoke. "You are good at this." Eden paused. "At all of it," he said, gesturing toward the house. "You make this place feel less empty." It was the most he had ever revealed. She stood beside him, leaving a respectful space between them. "Emptiness just means something has been neglected," she said softly. "A house needs care, just like a person." He turned and truly looked at her for the first time. "You have known loss," he stated. "Yes," she replied. "My mother when I was 12 and my father last year." "There were other losses too, the kind that slowly wear you down." "But you kept going," he observed. "What else is there to do?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "To stop living would dishonor their memory. I owe it to them to keep going." Jonas turned back to the horizon where the sky was painted orange and purple. "Sometimes that is all anyone can do," he said quietly. They stood in a shared silence, two strangers who understood each other's pain. Then Jonas cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "Luke and Sam are coming for dinner tomorrow. I told them you were cooking, if that is okay." "Of course," Eden said, feeling a little nervous. Jonas told her his men were coming for dinner, keeping up the story that she was his cousin. "They are good men, been with me for 5 years," he said, adding, "They know what happened. They will be respectful." This felt like a test, and Eden prepared an impressive meal of pot roast, fresh bread, and apple pie. She knew how his men treated her would set the tone for her new life here. Luke and Sam arrived at sunset, both weathered and polite, removing their hats at the door. "Ma'am," Luke nodded. "Jonas told us your family. Sorry to hear about your troubles." "Thank you," Eden replied smoothly. "Jonas has been very kind to give me a place to recover." During dinner, the men talked about ranch business, and Eden listened, learning the rhythms of her new home. "This is mighty fine cooking, ma'am," Luke said, getting a second serving. "It is." Sam, the quieter one, finally spoke. "The place feels more like a home again." An awkward silence fell over the table. Eden saw Jonas freeze at the mention of the past. The men looked like they instantly regretted their words, so Eden smoothly changed the topic. "Jonas mentioned you two are from around Iron Meadow?" she asked. The tension eased, and soon the men were laughing at a story about a stubborn bull. After they left, Jonas helped clear the dishes in a thoughtful silence. "That went well," she said, trying to draw him out. "They liked you," he said, turning to face her. And Sam was right. The place does feel different. Eden's heart beat a little faster. "Is that a good thing?" Jonas, this wounded man in his own kitchen, wrestled with his thoughts. "I do not know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to send you away before it feels too different. Get used to this, and the other part is just tired of being alone." The words hung in the air. His confession was raw. Eden saw Jonas instantly regret what he had said. He started to pull away, but she spoke quickly. "Being alone and being lonely are different. You can feel lonely in a crowd. Real companionship is simpler. It just means having respect and kindness with no strings attached." Jonas searched her face. "Is that what you are offering me?" "It is what I promised. 1 month of help, no strings attached. I meant every word." He nodded slowly, still full of doubt. "Your month is not even halfway over." But as he walked away, his steps seemed a little lighter. The second week brought a fierce summer storm. It battered the ranch with heavy wind and rain. Eden had never seen anything like it. The sheer violence of the prairie storm was terrifying. Thunder shook the house. She found Jonas on the porch, watching the storm calmly. "Should you be out here?" she shouted over the noise. "It is just the tail end," he said, noticing how scared she was. "Are you afraid of storms?" "I have never been in one like this. They are intense, but they pass quickly." He added, "I wish everything in life was like that. Intense, but quick." Eden knew he was no longer talking about the weather. She stepped onto the porch as the sky began to clear. Some things need time, she said quietly. The slow work is often the most important. Lasting things are built with patient care. Jonas turned to look right at her. The air smelled of rain. You are not talking about storms either, are you? No, he said her name, Eden, as if he was testing the sound of it. Why do you care? You could be somewhere else, somewhere you are wanted. Why do you stay here? It was a fair question, one she had asked herself many times. She took a deep breath. Because I saw something in you that I recognize in myself. It is the feeling that you have failed so badly you do not deserve a second chance. I felt that way after my father passed away. I felt I should have done more to save him. That feeling almost destroyed me. So what changed? Jonas asked. An old woman named Mrs. Chen, she found me crying in a hallway one night, was worthless. She asked me a question. Jonas was hanging on her every word. She said, do you think you are the first person to fail someone you loved? Do you think your guilt is special? She told me that everyone fails. The only true failure is giving up on yourself. That is how you dishonor their memory, by refusing to live the life they wanted for you. Eden's eyes welled with tears. My father wanted me to be happy. Wasting my life with guilt was just failing him again. I had a choice. Give up or honor him by trying again. Jonas sat in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. You think I am dishonoring them? I think they would want you to live, Jonas, not just survive. He shut his eyes, his face filled with pain. Mary always said I had too much life in me to waste it on worry and fear. She was always the one pushing me to take chances, to believe things would be okay. He opened his eyes, he looked out at the evening sky. She would not recognize the man I have become. Then maybe it is time to become a man she would recognize, Eden said softly. Jonas looked at her and she saw his defenses crack. It was the first real break in the wall he had built. I do not know how, he whispered. You start small. You accept that you might deserve a second chance at living. He looked at her. And I suppose you are the one to help me with that? I am willing to be patient with you, Eden said, holding his gaze. But you have to learn that needing help is not weakness. And having a friend does not mean you are betraying what you lost. The only sounds were the dripping rain and the distant thunder. Eden could see the war inside him, his lonely grief fighting a deep need to connect with someone. Finally, he gave a tiny nod. It was barely there, but it was enough. All right, he said quietly. After that conversation, the air on the ranch felt different. It was charged with a new, hopeful energy. Jonas did not change overnight. He was still a quiet and reserved man, but it felt like a door that was locked for years had been opened just a crack, letting in a little light. He started staying in the kitchen a little longer after their meals, nursing a cup of coffee. He would make small comments about the ranch or ask about her day. These small moments meant the world. He fixed the broken shutter she had mentioned without being asked again. He brought her a new shovel for the rocky garden. He even smiled once. It was a quick, rusty expression that vanished in a second. But Eden saw it, and a feeling of quiet triumph bloomed inside her. The third week of her stay began with a surprise heat wave. The mild Montana summer suddenly ended. The prairie turned into a shimmering sea of gold, and the ranch house felt like an oven by noon. Eden adapted, rising even earlier. She learned to cook in the cool mornings to avoid the worst of the brutal afternoon heat. She spent the hottest hours organizing the root cellar, then tended her garden in the evening. One sweltering afternoon, she heard a wagon approaching and climbed up from the cellar. Blinking in the sun, she saw an unfamiliar wagon pulling up to the house. An older woman, perhaps 50, with severe gray hair and a fancy town dress, sat in the driver's seat. Eden nervously smoothed her work dress, preparing to meet the visitor. She knew this would be the first real test of the story Jonas had created for her. Good afternoon, Eden called out as the woman climbed down. Can I help you with something? The woman's sharp eyes scanned Eden from her sun-touched face to her dirty apron. You must be the cousin. Eden, is it? She asked. Yes, ma'am. I'm Eden Blake. I am Harriet Thornton. My husband owns the bank in Iron Meadow, she announced, as if that explained everything. I've come to welcome you. We don't often get new residents, even temporary ones. Her tone was not quite suspicious, but it was certainly sizing Eden up. Would you like to come in? Eden offered. I can make some tea, but it's just as hot inside. That would be lovely, Harriet replied. Eden led her into the kitchen, glad she had worked so hard to make it presentable. She set water to boil and used the nice cups that had likely been stored away since Mary's death. Jonas isn't here right now, Eden explained. He's out checking fences with his men. He should be back for supper. Oh, I did not come to see Jonas, Harriet said, sitting at the table. I came to see you. We heard about your terrible situation, losing your family in that fire. Eden's hand froze. A fire. So that was the story Jonas told them. She realized with a shock that he had given her his own tragic history. Yes, she said carefully, her hand barely shaking as she poured the tea. It was very difficult. I am sure it was, Harriet said, her eyes as sharp as a hawk's. Jonas knows about that kind of loss. We were all devastated when Mary and the children passed. She paused. It's been 7 years, but some wounds never truly heal, do they? No, ma'am, they do not. It's good to see this house cared for again, and Jonas has been like a ghost for so long. Perhaps having family here will help him, she said, her gaze fixed on Eden. How long do you plan to stay? I'm not sure yet, as long as Jonas needs my help, I suppose. Was all Harriet said. The sound was neither friendly nor unfriendly. You're quite young to be all alone, no other family? None that I am close to, Eden said, which was true. No young man back east waiting for you? Steadily. No, ma'am, there is nobody else here. Harriet accepted the answer, but Eden could tell she was filing away every word. She was clearly planning to discuss this with everyone in town. Their careful conversation lasted for another 20 minutes. It felt less like a friendly chat and more like a polite interrogation. Eden answered vaguely when she had to, and truthfully when she could. She tried to act like a grieving but determined young woman. At last, Harriet stood up to leave. Well, my dear, you seem like a very sensible person. I do hope you will come to church on Sunday. Reverend Mitchell gives a truly wonderful service. It would be a good chance for people to meet you properly. I will have to ask Jonas, Eden replied. Nonsense, Harriet insisted. It will do him good. He has been absent from the church for far too long. Harriet walked to the door, then she paused, her face softening just a little. You know, dear, there is going to be talk. A young woman staying with a widower always causes a stir, cousin or not. But if you both act respectfully, it will all pass. The people here are good, but they do love to gossip. I understand, Eden said. After Harriet finally left, Eden sank into a chair, her heart pounding in her chest. She had survived the first real challenge, but it had been a very close call. She knew she had to talk with Jonas immediately. They desperately needed to get their stories straight. Their whole arrangement depended on it. When Jonas returned that evening, dusty and tired, Eden told him about the visit. His expression immediately darkened. Harriet Thornton, of course, he sighed. He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. She is the biggest gossip in 3 counties. Did she give you a hard time? Eden hesitated. Jonas, you told her my family died in a fire. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. It was the first thing I thought of. I knew the right answers for those kinds of questions. Eden took a breath. She wants us to come to church on Sunday. Jonas's expression completely shut down. No, Eden pressed on. She said you have been absent too long and people are talking. Let them talk, he said, his voice like stone. I am not going back to that church where I sat with Mary. It is where we had both of our children baptized. He struggled for control. I just cannot do it. Eden moved closer and spoke gently. You do not have to go, but maybe I should, just for appearances. After all, a grieving cousin would probably seek comfort in her faith. Jonas turned away and stared out the window at the growing darkness. After a long silence, he spoke. If you are going, I will take you, but I am not going inside. I will wait in the wagon. That is fair, she agreed. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, the kind that made the frontier hardships seem worthwhile. The sky was a brilliant blue with a gentle breeze. Eden put on her best clothes. She wore a simple blue dress she had carefully ironed and pinned her hair up neatly. Jonas was already waiting by the wagon, dressed in what were clearly his own Sunday clothes. He wore his best clothes, a clean shirt, and a respectable vest. He looked deeply uncomfortable, but helped her into the wagon. They set off for Iron Meadow, the ride quiet and tense. She watched his jaw tighten and his hands grip the reins. Eden knew this trip was forcing him to face his painful past. When they arrived, the churchyard was full of wagons and horses. People stared with surprise to see Jonas after so long. "I will be waiting right here," he said as she got down. "Thank you for bringing me," she replied, touching his tense arm. She did not wait for a reply, walking toward Harriet Thornton. The older woman stood near the entrance, ready to greet them. "Eden, dear, come. Let me introduce you to everyone," she said. What followed was a blur of friendly names and faces. She met Reverend Mitchell, the Johnsons, and the Cartwrights. Harriet made it clear Eden was Jonas Hale's cousin. The service itself was simple and filled with heart. The Reverend spoke of faith and community in hard times. Eden thought about her own struggles and of Jonas's isolation. Afterward, a group of women welcomed her warmly outside. They offered advice and asked careful questions about her plans. She answered them vaguely but with sincere politeness. A young mother named Martha approached her with a baby. "It is wonderful you are doing this for Jonas," she said kindly. "We have all been so worried about him being out there alone." Martha's expression turned sad. He and Mary were so happy. Their daughter Sarah was learning to read, and Thomas always laughed. Eden felt a lump in her throat, hearing these painful details. Sarah and Thomas were real children, with real personalities. Their loss felt much more real and heartbreaking now. The morning was pleasant but emotionally exhausting for Eden. "Excuse herself." Eden found Jonas in the wagon, his hat pulled low over his eyes. But as she got closer, she saw his knuckles were bone white from gripping the seat. His face was pale, and he was staring at the church as if it was a monster. "Jonas?" she asked softly, climbing up beside him. "Are you all right?" He didn't seem to hear her at all, and his breathing was fast and shallow. When Eden gently touched his arm, he flinched hard, his eyes wide with fear. For a second, he looked right through her, lost in a terrible memory. Then he shook his head, and his face filled with shame. "I am fine," he said, but his voice was rough, realizing how tightly he'd been holding on. "I'm fine," he said, his voice rough and unconvincing. "We should get going." But before Eden saw a tall, wealthy-looking man with silver hair walking toward them. "Mr. Thornton," Jonas said, his voice flat and cold. "Lionel, please," the man said with a smile, then looked at Eden. "You must be the cousin." After introducing himself, Lionel Thornton got right to the point. "I have an excellent offer for your west pasture land, Jonas." Jonas's face hardened. "The land is not for sale." "Now listen, Jonas," Thornton pressed. "It is a lot of land for one man to handle." "I said it is not for sale," Jonas repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. He quickly snapped the reins, and they left Thornton standing alone in the dust. They were halfway home before Jonas spoke again, his voice quiet. "Thornton has been trying to buy that land for 3 years now. He wants to connect his properties. But I will never sell it," his voice cracked, "because that is where the first house was, where my children were born, and where they—" He could not finish the sentence. "Where they passed away," Eden whispered, understanding everything. Jonas nodded, his hands gripping the reins tightly once more. "I burned what was left of the house. I could not stand to see it. But their graves are there, on a little hill that overlooks the creek where Sarah played. I will never sell that land. I will not let someone build over my family." "Of course you will not," Eden said, her heart breaking for him. "Thornton does not care about any of that," Jonas said with a bitter look. "He only cares about land and money. To him, I am just wasting good pasture on memories." "My land is not for sale," Jonas stated firmly. On the quiet ride home, Eden saw the church visit had shaken him deeply. "Thank you for going," she said gently. "Were people kind?" he asked, his voice low. "They were," she smiled. "Harriet Thornton made sure of it." She paused. "Harriet also said you and Mary were pillars of this community." Jonas's friendly expression vanished completely. "That was a different life," he said flatly. Eden looked at him with understanding in her eyes. "Was it?" she asked softly. "Or is it the same man who has just forgotten how to live?" They rode the rest of the way home in a heavy silence. In the days that followed, a gentle rain brought life back to Eden's garden. She found a quiet peace tending to her plants. Sometimes she would catch Jonas watching her as she worked the soil. He never spoke, but she could see a deep longing in his eyes. She knew he was remembering other hands working in that same garden. He was remembering a happier time from long ago. Then one afternoon, Luke rode toward the house, his face pale with panic. Eden ran out to meet him on the porch. "What is wrong?" "The creek is flooding," he yelled out of breath. "Jonas went after a stranded calf on the other side." "But the water is rising too fast." Eden's blood ran cold. "He is about 2 miles south," Luke shouted. Eden did not hesitate for even a second. She grabbed a heavy rope from the barn and started to run. The once calm stream was now a churning, brown torrent. As a new storm rolled in, she pushed herself to run faster. And then, through the pouring rain, she finally saw him. Jonas was in the middle of the swollen creek, struggling to stand in the raging water. As he struggled against the current with the terrified calf, Eden watched in horror as he lost his footing and the powerful water pulled him under. "Jonas!" she screamed, running to the edge. He came up gasping, but the current was sweeping him downstream. He was heading toward the dangerous rocks. Eden did not hesitate for a second. There was no time to think about the danger. She knew she was not a strong swimmer, but she had to do something. With trembling hands, she tied one end of the rope around her waist. She secured the other end to a large tree. Then, she jumped into the freezing, raging water. The shock of the cold stole her breath. The current pulled at her, but the rope held. She fought her way toward Jonas. Water choked her and blurred her vision. "Eden, no!" Jonas yelled when he saw her. "Go back!" he shouted in a panic. She ignored him and finally grabbed his arm. Another wave pulled him down, but she held on tight. The rope around her waist pulled taut. The current fought to take them both. The calf was gone, swept away by the river's force. Eden did not care about the animal. She only cared about keeping Jonas's head above the water. The rope was their only anchor. "Hold on," she screamed over the roaring flood. Jonas wrapped his arms around her. Together they used the rope to pull themselves toward the bank. It was a slow, painful struggle. Eden's hands were raw and her lungs burned, but she refused to let go. Suddenly, Luke was on the bank, reaching for them. He grabbed Jonas's shirt and pulled. Sam appeared out of nowhere to help. The two men dragged them from the water. Eden and Jonas collapsed on the muddy ground. They lay there, shaking and gasping for air. Only the sound of the heavy rain filled the silence. Jonas finally rolled over to face Eden. His eyes were filled with a mix of emotions. She saw fear and anger, and something else she could not name. "What were you thinking?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You could have been killed." "Neither can you, it seems," Eden coughed, her body trembling. "You were drowning." "That calf was already lost," she yelled. "You were going to die for nothing. You were going to make me stand there and watch you drown." "And for what, Jonas?" He just stared, shocked by her anger. "I did not come 1,000 miles, she said. "I did not fight this hard just to watch you throw your life away." Tears, or maybe just rain, streamed down her face. "You are too busy punishing yourself. You have forgotten that your life has value. You have forgotten that some people care." Her voice broke, that people might care. Jonas reached for her then, pulling her against his chest. His arms shook as he held her, afraid she might vanish. She felt him trembling from the cold and the shock. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her wet hair. "Oh, Eden, I am so sorry. When I saw you go into that water, I had never been more terrified in my entire life." "Now you know how I felt," she said softly. They clung to each other on the muddy bank while Luke and Sam quietly stepped away to see to the horses. The rain fell harder, but neither of them moved. They had crossed a line together in that raging water, revealing truths that could not be taken back. Jonas pulled back just enough to see her face. His eyes were raw with feelings he had locked away for 7 long years. "I sent for help," he said, his voice breaking. "But I got you instead. A woman too stubborn to give up." He struggled for words. "Too full of life to let me waste mine. The woman I do not deserve, but—" He paused, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I cannot live without you." Eden's heart swelled at his confession, at the vulnerability in his eyes. He looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "You do not have to live without me," she whispered. "I'm right here. I have been here since the day I arrived, and I am not going anywhere. I do not care about the month or our agreement. None of it matters. Eden cupped his face with her trembling hands. My heart has been yours since the day I arrived. I saw your pain when you tried to send me away, just to protect me from yourself. You cannot get rid of me that easily, Jonas Hale. For a long moment, Jonas just stared, unable to believe what he was hearing. Then his last wall finally came down. He kissed her, a desperate and powerful kiss that tasted of rain and ended 7 years of loneliness. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I am broken, he warned. I will still have bad days, days when the grief is too much. I know, she replied simply. I do not know if I can be what you need. You already are, Eden said, holding him tighter. You are honest and kind, and you are trying. That is all I need. That and a chance to try with you. Thunder rumbled overhead as Luke called out. They helped each other stand, moving like two people who had survived a great battle. They were exhausted and shaken, but somehow stronger. The ride back to the ranch was silent, but it was a new kind of silence, filled with comfort. Jonas kept his arm around Eden, holding her close as she shivered in her wet clothes. She leaned against him, listening to the steady beat of his heart. She knew something important had changed between them in that swollen creek. They had both come close to death, but in that moment they had both finally chosen to live. Excusing themselves, both knew without words that something deep had changed. Eden's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak, and Jonas wasn't doing any better. They stood dripping in the kitchen, exchanging looks filled with shock and awe at what had just happened, the near drowning and the confessions that came after. You need to get out of those wet clothes, Jonas finally said, his voice gentle. Warm up before you get pneumonia. Same goes for you. They headed to their own rooms, and Eden shakily peeled off her soaked dress, fumbling clumsily with the buttons. She dried off roughly with a towel, put on her warmest nightgown, and wrapped herself in a quilt. But the shivering wouldn't stop. The cold had seeped into her bones. Or maybe the shock was just hitting her now. She sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, replaying those terrifying moments in the water, how Jonas had slipped under, and her desperate need to act fast or lose him for good. The powerful current trying to rip them apart, while she clung with every ounce of strength she had. A soft knock at the door pulled her away. Eden, are you decent? Yes. If she didn't act fast, she'd lose him forever. The force pulling them apart was brutal, yet she gripped on with every bit of strength she had. A gentle knock at the door made her glance up. Eden, are you decent? Yes, I am. Jonas came in holding 2 steaming mugs. He'd changed into dry clothes, but his hair was still damp and messy from roughly toweling it. He handed her a mug, coffee with a kick that warmed her throat pleasantly. Whiskey, he said, settling into the single chair with his own mug, for the shock, warming in his throat. Whiskey, he said, sitting down in the lone chair with his own mug. For they sat quietly for a few minutes, sipping the fortified coffee, letting its warmth soak in. Eden glanced over the rim of her mug, noticing how Jonas kept stealing looks at her, as if reminding himself she was really there, really safe. I need to tell you something, he said at last, voice low. About that day, the fire. Knew she was truly there and safe. I have to tell you something, he finally said, his voice quiet. About that, Eden set her mug down gently. You don't have to. I do. He stared into his coffee like it held the answers. You nearly died today because of me. You deserve to know why I've acted the way I have, why I tried so hard to push you away. Eden pulled the quilt tighter around her and waited, giving him room to speak. It was late October, 7 years ago. We'd had an early cold snap, and I'd gone out to check cattle in the north pasture. Mary was home with the kids. Sarah was sick, just a cold, or so we thought. Nothing serious. Thomas was his usual wild self, running and getting into trouble. Moment. It was a cold October evening, 7 years ago. We just had an early frost, and I'd gone out to check the cattle in the pasture to the north. Mary was home caring for the kids. Sarah was feeling under the weather, just a cold, or so we thought. A brief smile flickered on Jonas's face, gone as fast as it came. I should have been back by midday, but one cow got tangled in wire. It took me hours to free her without hurting her more. When I finished, it was late afternoon. I was tired thinking about a warm fire, Mary's cooking, and the kids making noise. His hands clenched the mug tighter. Then I saw smoke billowing from where our house stood, thick black smoke miles away. I rode as fast as I ever had, but I was too far, too slow. Jonas's face shifted at the memory, then softened in an instant. I should have been back by noon, but one cow got caught up in some wire. It took me hours to free her without making things worse. By the time I was done, the day was almost gone. I was exhausted, my mind on a warm fire and Mary's cooking, and the kids' laughter. His grip on the mug tightened. I spotted the smoke from miles away, thick black smoke rising right where our house stood. I pushed my horse harder than I ever had, but it was too late. Children's noise. His hands tightened around the mug. I saw the smoke from miles away. Thick black smoke pouring into the sky from exactly where our house stood. I rode harder than I have ever ridden in my life, but I was too. Eden's heart tightened, imagining that desperate ride and growing terror. The whole house was... The fire was everywhere. I couldn't get close. I failed Luke and Sam. Neighbors saw the smoke and had to hold me back. His voice cracked. I could hear them all screaming. They screamed my name and I could do nothing. He explained the fire started in the stovepipe. A single tiny crack had let sparks into the wall. I walked past it 100 times. I should have fixed it. My family is gone because I was not paying attention. That was not your fault, Eden said, kneeling before him. She took his hand. It was a horrible, tragic accident. A husband is supposed to protect them, he whispered, and I failed them while they died screaming for me. He gripped her hand tightly. The maybe is what haunts me. Maybe if I had just been more attentive, or if I had come home sooner. The maybes never stop. In that moment, she understood the depth of his guilt. He was terrified of caring for anyone ever again. Is that why you tried to make me leave? She asked softly. Because, Jonas, you did not fail me today at all. I am safe right now because you saved my life. His voice was rough. I thought I was going to lose you too. But you did not, she said, and I made my own choice. You would never ask, I know. That is why I came. You have spent 7 years punishing yourself, Jonas. Your family would never have wanted that for you. The first tears she had ever seen him cry finally fell. He spoke of Mary. She said life is too precious for regrets. His voice broke. But regrets are all that I have left. No, Eden stood and pulled him up to face her. You have right now. You have the chance to heal. Honor their memory by proving that love never has to end. With loss, Jonas pulled her into a desperate, shaking hug. 7 years of grief finally broke free in quiet sobs. She just held him, letting him release all the pain. They stood until his breathing calmed and his tears stopped. He pulled back, his eyes red, but also strangely relieved. I do not know how to care again, he admitted softly. One day at a time, she whispered back. Just trust me. I am not Mary Jonas, she said, gently touching his face. I am just here now. Let that be our starting point. He nodded, then noticed she was shivering from the cold. You are cold, he said, moving to build up the fire. Soon a warm blaze crackled, chasing away the chill. As he turned to go, her quiet voice stopped him. Stay. Please, just stay and talk with me for a while. He hesitated for a moment, then sat in a nearby chair. They talked deep into the night, opening up completely. Jonas spoke of his dear wife Mary and their children. He shared memories of their laughter and their happy life. Eden listened quietly, letting him honor those he had lost. In return, she shared her own story of a poor childhood. We had very little, she said, but my parents taught me joy. Happiness is a choice you make, not something you own. You can always find hope, even in the hardest times. That is a rare gift, Jonas said, seeing light in darkness. It is a choice, she replied, to focus on what is left. Some days the loss just feels like too much to bear. But you must keep choosing light. He watched her face. He felt like he was truly seeing her for the first time. How are you so wise, he asked. Just stubborn, she smiled. You, she said softly, are the bravest person I know. I have ever met, Jonas said, his voice firm. You came here alone and stayed through everything. And today, he shook his head, jumping into that water without a second thought. That is not stubbornness, Eden. That is courage. No, he leaned forward, his gaze fixed on hers. It was love. The word hung in the air and Eden's heart began to pound. I know this is very soon, Jonas admitted, and I know I am still broken. But when I saw you in the water, I thought I was going to lose you. That is when I realized. I have already lost my heart to you. Somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. You looked at me like I was a man worth saving. I fell in love with you, Eden Blake. Tears of joy welled up in Eden's eyes. You can start by accepting that I fell in love with you too. I saw your kindness, even when you were so afraid to show it. You just need to accept that what we have is real, Jonas. He closed the space between them and cupped her face in his hands. Then marry me. Not because of a deal, but because I love you and I want to make you happy. Yes. Eden did not have to think about it. Yes, I will marry you. The kiss they shared was soft and deep, filled with promise instead of fear. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. We should do it soon, Jonas said, before you realize you could do much better than a broken rancher like me. 3 days, Eden had decided with a smile. That is not enough time for you to change your mind. Jonas laughed, a true, genuine laugh. Do you really think I would do that? I think you will wake up tomorrow and start to worry that this is a mistake. Eden touched his face gently. But I am not going to let you push me away. Not this time. Stubborn, Jonas whispered, but his voice was full of warmth. You already knew that about me. He stayed with her by the fire until she fell asleep, holding her hand. When she woke up early the next morning, she found him making coffee in the kitchen. His eyes were tired, but he looked more peaceful than she had ever seen him. Could you not sleep? She asked. I did not want to. Jonas handed her a cup. I kept thinking this was all a dream, that you were not real and yesterday never happened. It is real, Eden said softly, and so am I. They stood together watching the sunrise. It was a new day, full of hope. The next 3 days were a blur of wedding preparations. Jonas returned with news that the whole town was buzzing about their wedding. The story of how she saved him from the creek had spread like wildfire. People were calling her an angel sent to help the grieving widower. Jonas laughed, saying Harriet Thornton was taking all the credit for their match. Eden just smiled as she kneaded bread dough in the kitchen. Just then, Martha from church arrived with several other women. They brought beautiful fabric and insisted on sewing Eden's wedding dress. Their cheerful chatter soon filled the quiet home with warmth. Martha whispered to Eden, "It is so good to see Jonas smiling again." We had almost given up hope for him, Martha admitted quietly. He is learning to carry his pain forward now, Eden replied softly. Martha nodded. His late wife Mary would have wanted this for him. She would be happy he found someone to help him live again. The dress they all created was simple, elegant, and made with love. The night before the wedding, Eden tried it on for a final look. You are so beautiful, Martha said, her eyes wet with happy tears. That night, Eden lay awake, thinking about the vows she would make. This was no longer just a practical arrangement. These were real promises to the man she had grown to love so deeply. She also thought of Mary, hoping she would approve of this union. Eden wanted to honor her memory by helping Jonas learn to live once more. Their wedding morning dawned bright and beautiful. Martha and her friends helped Eden get ready, pinning wildflowers in her hair. For a moment, she truly felt like a princess. Jonas waited at the altar, looking handsome in a brand new suit. As Eden walked down the aisle, his breath caught in his throat. The Reverend spoke of second chances and the healing of broken hearts. With a steady voice, Jonas promised to love and honor her for all his days. Eden promised him not just her love, but a true and lasting partnership. And when Jonas kissed her, it sealed their beautiful new beginning. His wife, the little church filled with applause. 7 years of sadness finally lifted. Joy and hope filled the air. It felt like something truly good had just happened. Later, a huge party started at the ranch. Almost half the county brought food to celebrate. Everyone ate, laughed, and danced to music all through the long, sunny afternoon. Eden felt like she was in a wonderful dream, thanking everyone for their kindness. She always found her way back to Jonas, who kept her close by his side. He needed her touch just to reassure himself that this was all real. Eden could see how happy the whole community was to see Jonas transformed. They were not just celebrating a wedding, but his return to life itself. Soon they stood alone on the porch in the twilight. "Are you happy?" Jonas asked softly. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she said. "And you, are you terrified?" "Yes," he admitted, "but I am also happier than I deserve to be." "Don't say that," she teased, "or I will have to kiss you until you believe me." A true, slow smile spread across his face. "I think I might need a lot of convincing." "Good," I said, "because we have a whole lifetime." They went inside as night fell. Their first night as husband and wife was tender, gentle, and full of care. Jonas treated her as if she was the most precious thing in the entire world. She showed him with soft touches that she was strong enough for his love and his fears. Later, they lay together in their new bed, listening to the sounds of the prairie night. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Jonas confessed in the darkness, "for this to be taken away from me, just like everything else was." "Nothing is going to go wrong," Eden said with a firm, loving voice. "Whatever comes our way, we will face it together. That is what marriage means." He pulled her closer and whispered, "I love you, Eden Hale." Her new name thrilled her. The weeks that followed were a wonderful time as summer turned into autumn. Eden and Jonas became true partners, working their ranch and building a new life. Jonas still had difficult days when his old grief would try to pull him down. But he never pushed Eden away for long, and he was slowly learning to let her in. He learned that showing his feelings was not a weakness, but a sign of trust. One afternoon, when Jonas was finally ready, they rode out to visit the graves together. They stood on a gentle hill, overlooking a creek much kinder than the last one. Three simple headstones marked the resting place of Mary, Sarah, and Thomas. Jonas stared at the stones, lost in thought, and Eden gave him the silence he needed. "I used to come here every week," he finally said, his voice low. "I'd tell them everything, but it started to feel like I was just holding on to ghosts." "They are not gone, Jonas," Eden said softly. "They are a part of you." Tears welled in his eyes. "I want them to know you saved me. You gave me a reason to truly live, not just survive." Eden took his hand, and they stood together under the warm sun. "I think they know," she whispered. "I think they have been watching over you. They were just waiting for you to be ready to live again." 2 months later, on a crisp morning, Eden woke up feeling different. A quiet realization washed over her, and her hand drifted to her stomach. She waited 3 weeks, wanting to be absolutely sure before telling Jonas. The morning sickness and subtle changes were all familiar signs to her. She finally knew the time was right to share her secret. That evening, as Jonas reviewed his ledgers, she chose her moment. "Jonas," she began quietly, "I have something to tell you." He looked up, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Are you all right?" She put down her sewing, her heart racing. "I'm expecting a baby. Our baby." The color drained from Jonas's face. He shot up from his chair in a panic. "No," he choked out. "You cannot. It is too dangerous. I saw what can happen." "I cannot go through that again," he said, his voice trembling. "I can't lose you too." Eden moved toward him, but he backed away, trapped in a past nightmare. She saw the raw panic in his eyes. "Jonas, please listen to me." "No, you listen," he pleaded. "Mary was so strong and healthy and still—" He could not finish the sentence, unable to speak his greatest fear. "I cannot watch that happen to you. I just cannot," he said, shaking. "He took them all from me. What if he decides to take you too?" Eden felt a new fear rise inside her, not for herself, but for losing Jonas to his terror. "Please, I need—" He looked around for an escape. "I have to check on something in the barn." Then he fled. He was gone before Eden could stop him, leaving her alone in the kitchen with tears on her face. This should have been a moment of pure joy. Instead, Jonas was falling apart, and she felt helpless. She gave him an hour, then found him in the barn, his head buried in his hands. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice muffled. "I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I can't be what you need." Eden sat beside him in the straw, not touching him, but making sure he knew she was there. "Talk to me, Jonas. Tell me what you are really afraid of." His voice was raw. "Everything. I'm afraid for you during childbirth. I'm afraid for the baby. I'm afraid something will happen later. An accident or a sickness. I'm afraid I'll fail you the way I failed them. You did not fail them, she said firmly. But what if I fail you? What if I make the wrong choice? He finally met her eyes, his face full of pain. I love you so much, it terrifies me. And now a child is coming. Our child. I'm supposed to protect both of you. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Eden took his hand. You are strong enough, and you are not alone. We are in this together, she said, squeezing his hand. Listen to me, Jonas. God didn't give us this child to take it away. He gave us this gift because he knows we are ready. Yes, having a baby is terrifying, but we can't live our lives afraid of what might happen. We have to have faith. I don't have any faith anymore, Jonas admitted quietly. I lost it in the fire. Then borrow mine, Eden said fiercely. I have enough faith for both of us. I believe we're going to be fine, and our child will be healthy. And I believe you are going to be an amazing father. Our love can get us through anything. Jonas was crying now, silent tears making their way down his face. What if I lose you, he whispered. You won't. But even if you did, you would survive it. Eden moved closer and wrapped her arms around him. You are not going to lose me, Jonas. I'm too stubborn. Remember me? I pulled you out of a river. I fought my way into your closed-off heart. Do you really think I'm going to let childbirth defeat me? A sound that was half sob, half laugh escaped him. You are a remarkable woman. No, I'm just determined, and I need you to be determined with me. I need you to believe we will be all right, or at least pretend to until it feels true. Jonas took a deep, shaky breath. I'll try. I swear I'll try. But you have to promise me something. Of course, what? Promise that you'll be careful, that you'll rest and let me take care of you. And if anything feels even a little bit wrong, you will tell me immediately. I promise. He pulled her close, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. He whispered, I'm going to be a father again. She replied softly, Yes, you are. I don't know how, he admitted. Me neither, she said. We will figure it out together. They sat in the barn for a long time, his hand never leaving her belly. Eden could feel the war inside him, his old fears fighting against this new hope. Slowly she felt him start to accept it. We should tell Martha and the others, Jonas finally said. Not yet, she answered. Let's just keep it our secret for a little while longer. Eden smiled. Besides, you need some time before the whole county starts giving us advice. That's a fair point. Jonas carefully helped her to her feet, brushing straw from her dress. Are you tired? Should you even be out here in the barn? He asked, full of concern. Alien laughed. Jonas, I'm pregnant, not made of glass. I can still live my life. I will be sensible, I promise. But I am not spending the next 7 months wrapped in cotton. He nodded, but she could already see the worry settling permanently in his eyes. She knew the months ahead would be a challenge for them both as her body changed. And Jonas would have to fight his fears, learning to believe that this time would be different. But the most important thing was that they would do it together. As they walked to the house under a sky full of stars, Eden said a silent prayer for their baby. She also prayed that Jonas would find the strength to overcome his past pain. Back inside, Jonas insisted on making her tea, fussing over her like a mother hen. Eden was patient, knowing his constant worrying came from a place of deep love. When they finally went to bed, he held her so carefully, as if she might break. I love you, he whispered in the dark. Both of you. Eden's heart felt full. It was the first time he had spoken of the baby as a real person. It was a start. We love you too, she whispered back, already dreaming of the family they would be. That winter was both the longest and shortest of Eden's life as her body began to change. With each passing day, the baby grew, and her movements became slower. And Jonas watched over her with an intensity that was both touching and exhausting. He checked the stovepipe every single day, his fear of fire becoming an obsession. Eden understood where his fear came from, but by her 5th month, she was getting frustrated. Jonas, I'm going to the chicken coop to collect eggs, she announced one February morning. I'll get the eggs, Jonas said, grabbing his coat. You've already done the morning feeding. I can do it, Eden insisted, but the path is icy, you could fall. Then I will walk very carefully. Eden tried to hide her frustration. I am pregnant, not helpless. I need to do things or I will go crazy. Jonas's face was a mask of worry. I am just trying to keep you safe, Eden. I know, she said gently, but you cannot protect me from every little thing. That is not possible. She stepped closer to him. You have to trust me. I know you are scared, but I will be careful. What if you fall out there alone, he asked. I am only 50 feet away. You would hear me call. Eden placed his hand on her belly, where the baby was kicking. Feel that? Our child is strong, and so am I. Jonas's composure broke, revealing his deep fear. I cannot lose you, Eden. I just cannot. You will not, she promised, but keeping me cooped up in this house is not really living. Her words struck him hard. He flinched, recognizing the truth in what she was saying. He had spent 7 years barely alive, and now he was about to force that same existence on her. I am so sorry, he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. I know I am being impossible. My mind just goes to dark places when I cannot see you. I know, but you have to fight it, for all of us. Eden squeezed his hand. How about I take the emergency bell? If I need you, I will ring it. The large bell on the porch was for emergencies. The idea seemed to calm Jonas, and he reluctantly agreed. Eden gathered the eggs safely. When she finished, she decided to ring the bell just as a little test. Jonas appeared in the doorway in seconds, his eyes wide with panic until he saw her smiling. Just testing, she shouted. He looked both relieved and slightly exasperated. Martha continued to visit often. She brought good advice and company, and was very blunt about Jonas's constant hovering. You are going to drive that poor woman to distraction, she told him while Eden was napping. I have had 4 babies, Jonas. My husband never once treated me like I was made of glass. Your husband did not, Jonas trailed off, unable to say the words. He did not lose his first wife. Martha's voice softened. No, he did not. But that does not mean he was not scared. Every man is. But you cannot let that fear poison this happy time. Eden needs a husband, not a warden. Martha gave him a stern look. She needs your support, not your constant anxiety. That baby will be here in a few months. You need to get your fear under control before then. To Eden's surprise, Jonas took the criticism to heart. That night, he sat her down at the kitchen table. I promise I'm going to do better, he said seriously. I will still worry, but I will try to trust you more. I have to remember that you are strong and that we were brought together for a reason. Thank you, Eden said, gently taking his hand. I know this is hard, but we will get through it together. As winter faded into spring, Eden's belly grew round with their very active baby. She would often guide Jonas's hand to feel the kicks, watching his face. He was filled with a mix of wonder and terror, slowly bonding with the child he was so afraid to lose. What if I have forgotten how to be a father? He asked one night, his hand spread across her stomach. You have not forgotten, Eden said, covering his hand with hers, and we will figure it out together. I just want to do right by this child, he whispered. You will, she assured him. Loving this baby so much is the perfect start. They prepared the nursery in the room that had once belonged to his daughter Sarah. At first, the memories were too painful for Jonas, but together they painted the walls a soft cream color. Luke built them a beautiful cradle as a gift, and they placed it in the center of the room. While Eden sewed tiny blankets, Jonas carved a wooden rocking horse, his hands remembering the old skill. Thomas loved his rocking horse, Jonas said one evening, his voice soft. Eden gently encouraged him to talk about his first children, knowing it eased his fears. He was fearless, Jonas recalled with a bittersweet smile, and Sarah was so cautious and thoughtful. He set down his carving tools. I miss them every single day. But lately, he continued, looking at Eden, the missing does not hurt as much. I can finally remember them with love instead of just with pain. That's healing, Eden said softly, her eyes shining with tears. I used to feel guilty, like I was betraying their memory if I stopped hurting, he admitted. But Sarah and Thomas were so full of life. They would hate that I spent years just existing. His eyes were clear and honest. You showed me that honoring the dead doesn't mean dying with them. I am so glad, Eden whispered back. Me too, he said, returning to his work. They worked in a comfortable silence, Jonas shaping a gift for his new child, and Eden stitching love into every garment. By late April, Eden was nearly due. I just existed for years. For them. His eyes were honest. You gave me that. You taught me honoring them means living. Tears filled her eyes. I'm glad. Me too. He resumed carving in silence, their baby's gift as Eden sewed. By late April, she was. Her body was enormous and ached all the time, but she cherished every kick. Each movement was a reminder that they would soon meet their child. Martha began visiting more often to check on Eden's progress. Any day now, she said, feeling Eden's belly. This baby is ready to arrive. Jonas's anxiety grew worse. He hovered over Eden constantly, a bundle of nerves. When labor finally began on a warm evening, he looked pale with worry. It's time, Eden said, her own heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. You need to go get Martha now. Jonas hesitated, not wanting to leave her side. Please, Eden said, gripping his arm. I will be fine. I just need you to bring her back. He ran, and the sound of his horse faded into the night, leaving Eden with her thoughts. For a moment, she felt a wave of terror. This was really happening. She moved through the house, preparing the clean linens and water just as Martha had told her. The contractions were coming steadily now, each one stronger than the last. She lit every lamp in the house, needing the light to fight back her growing fear. Jonas returned with Martha in what felt like minutes. Martha immediately took control. Her calm presence was a comfort to everyone in the small house. You are doing just fine, Martha said, helping Eden get comfortable. First babies like to take their time. But the hours that followed were the most challenging of Eden's entire life. Martha was a steady guide, coaching her breathing and offering words of encouragement. Jonas paced nervously outside the bedroom door, looking completely helpless. Martha finally sent him away, saying his worry was not helping the situation. Go make yourself useful, she told him gently. Boil some water. As morning approached, the pain intensified to a whole new level. Martha's expression became focused. All right, dear, it is time to push now. It was the hardest thing Eden had ever done, a trial of pain and pure will. In a moment of desperation, she screamed Jonas's name, needing him there. And then he was, holding her hand, his face filled with love. I'm here, he said. You can do this. I can't, she sobbed. You can, he insisted. You are the strongest person I have ever known. Just a little more, my love. Our baby is almost here. With one last monumental effort, as sunlight filled the room, a beautiful new sound joined them. A baby's cry filled the room, strong and perfect. It's a boy, Martha announced, her voice full of emotion. A beautiful, healthy boy. Eden sank back into the pillows, filled with a joy that was almost painful. Martha cleaned the baby and placed him in Eden's arms, a tiny being with a full head of dark hair. Jonas stood frozen, just staring at his son as if he could not believe he was real. Eden saw tears streaming down his face as he trembled with overwhelming emotions. Jonas, she said softly, come meet your son. He moved slowly as if in a daze. His hands shook as he reached out and gently traced the baby's tiny face with one finger. He's perfect, Jonas whispered in awe. He is really ours. Eden asked him, do you want to hold him? He looked terrified, but he nodded yes. She carefully placed the baby into his father's arms, showing him how to support the little head. The moment the baby settled on his chest, something inside Jonas broke wide open. He cried silently, letting go of 7 long years of grief, fear, and guilt. I am so sorry I was scared, he said. But you are here and you are both safe now. I promise to be the best father. The baby made a small sound, his tiny hand waving in the air. Jonas caught it, amazed as the miniature fingers wrapped right around his own. He has a strong grip, Jonas said, his voice full of wonder. He is a fighter, like his parents. Watching them, Eden's heart felt like it would burst. What should we name him, she asked. Jonas looked down at his son, considering the perfect name for him. William, he said finally. William Thomas Hale, after my father and after Thomas. He was connecting his son to the family he came from. William, Eden tested the name. I love it. Martha quietly cleaned up and let herself out, leaving the new family alone. Jonas handed the baby back to Eden and then stretched out on the bed beside them. Thank you, he whispered, for fighting so hard, for giving me this amazing gift. We gave each other this gift, Eden said, resting her head on his shoulder. We built this family together. I truly thought I was meant to be alone forever, Jonas murmured, looking at their sleeping son. Until you taught me what real love is. It is the kind that does not run from fear. It is the kind that walks through the hard times with you and never, ever gives up. You save me every single day, just by being here and believing in me. You saved me too, Eden said. You showed me that I was worth fighting for. You gave me a home and a family and a love I never even knew I could hope for. The sun rose higher, filling the room with a golden light as William slept between them. Eden felt Jonas take her hand, their fingers lacing together just as their lives had. Their new family felt like a bond that could never be broken. The following days were filled with wonder. William was a good baby, mostly needing to be fed and held. Eden recovered her strength quickly, and she watched Jonas transform. His old anxieties slowly changed into something much healthier. He was attentive and careful, but no longer filled with constant fear. He learned how to change diapers and to rock their son to sleep with a gentle grace. One night, Eden watched him standing with William by the window. He was humming a soft tune, completely lost in the moment with his son. She realized this was the man who had been buried under so much grief. "What are you thinking about?" Jonas asked, sensing her gaze. "That you are a natural father," she replied with a smile. He turned to her, his face looking more peaceful than she had ever seen it. "Yes," he said softly. "Everything is finally going right." William grew steadily, hitting each little milestone with a happy spirit. He first smiled at 6 weeks, and at 3 months, he had a laugh that filled the house. Each new development was a celebrated miracle for their family. With every passing May, Eden saw Jonas healing a little bit more. He started laughing more and worrying less, living fully in the moment. One autumn afternoon, they visited the graves together. Jonas carried their 6-month-old son up the hill with a sense of peace. "Mary, Sarah, Thomas," he said quietly, "I want you to meet William. I want you to know that loving him does not mean I have forgotten you. It means I finally understand that life is precious and love never runs out." Eden placed a supportive hand on his shoulder as he spoke. "I am happy now," Jonas continued, his voice clear and strong. "Truly happy. I think this is what you would have wanted for me. I think you would like Eden. She is brave and she saved me, and you would have loved spoiling William." He stood there for a long moment, his shoulders finally relaxing, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. "Thank you," he whispered to the past, "for teaching me how to love. I am ready now to live again." A warm breeze blew, feeling like a blessing as Jonas turned to Eden. His tears were not from grief, but from a sense of healing. "They would have loved him," Eden said softly, watching their son, William. "Yes, they would have," Jonas agreed, pulling his new family close. As the seasons turned, the ranch flourished right alongside their growing son. The lonely house became a home again, filled with warmth and laughter. Eden's presence brought life back not just to her garden, but to the entire community. Old friends and neighbors returned, drawn by the happiness the couple had built. Martha became a doting grandmother to William, guiding Eden with her wisdom. Luke and Sam were proud uncles who were always ready to play with the young boy. Even the stern Harriet Thornton could not help but adore their little family. Then one day, at 11 months old, William took his first fearless steps. He walked from Eden's arms right into Jonas's, who was beaming with pure joy. All the past anxiety was gone, replaced by a father's simple, happy pride. "Well, there goes our peace and quiet," Jonas laughed, lifting his happy son into the air. "I would not want it any other way," Eden replied, her heart completely full. "I want exactly this, the noise, the mess, all of this wonderful life." That night, as they lay in bed, Jonas held her close. "Remember that first day? I was so foolish. I tried to send away the best thing that ever happened to me." He kissed her temple gently. "I was just too scared to accept such a gift." "You were the one who saved me from myself," he said honestly. "You refused to give up on me, even when I had already given up." Eden turned to face him in the soft light. "That is what love does. It holds on. It fights. It believes in a future, even when everything seems impossible. You and William are my whole world now, Jonas said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me a second chance at a life bigger than I ever could have imagined. Eden smiled and kissed him softly. We built this beautiful life together. 2 years later, on a perfect summer evening, their son was a happy, running toddler. As their son William chased fireflies in the yard, Jonas and Eden sat on their favorite hill. The setting sun painted the sky in beautiful colors of gold and red. Jonas put his arm around Eden. Look at this. 2 years ago, I was all alone in that house. I was so sure that I would only feel grief for the rest of my life. And now we have everything. Eden leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their son play with pure joy. I thought I was meant to live a lonely life, Jonas said softly, as a punishment for my past. But you taught me something so important, he continued. You showed me what love really is. Love is not something you have to earn or deserve. It is a gift, given freely. Oh, he turned to her, his eyes clear and honest. It changes everything it touches. You loved me when I felt I was unlovable. You saw something in me worth saving. That is true love. It is the choice you make every day to believe in someone. Tears rolled down Eden's cheeks. You did the exact same for me. You gave me a home when I had none. You let me prove my own worth. You saw me when I was broken and scared, and you chose to build this beautiful life with me. We built this life together, Jonas said, repeating the words that had become their promise. They chose hope over sadness, and chose to truly live, not just survive. Just then, William ran over to them, his face bright and happy. Papa, Mama, Bug, he said, showing them a ladybug crawling on his little hand. Jonas lifted his son onto his lap and looked at the bug with great seriousness. That is a fine bug, Will. William smiled, but then the ladybug flew away, and he wiggled down to play again. They watched their miracle child, who taught Jonas that his heart was big enough to love again. He now knew he could be a father without forgetting the children he had lost. William was his own person, and Jonas loved him with a powerful joy that had replaced all fear. I want to have another baby, Eden said suddenly, surprising herself with the words. They had talked about it before, but had never made any real plans. Jonas felt a flicker of his old fear, but he pushed it away. Are you sure? I am very sure. I want William to have a brother or sister. I want this house to be full of life. Eden took his hand. I want to keep building this family with you. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Then a warm smile spread across his face. Okay, let us have another baby. Are you not scared? She asked. I am terrified, he admitted, but that is okay. Fear does not have to stop us anymore. To be scared and brave at the same time. Eden kissed him as the sun disappeared. The sky turned a deep purple, and the prairie around them seemed full of promise. Their ranch house glowed in the twilight, a warm and welcoming sight. It was a real home now, a place where their love could grow and thrive. It was where two broken people had healed each other, turning their grief into gratitude. Jonas called to William, and their son came running, his arms wide open. Jonas caught him and tossed him high, and the boy squealed with pure happiness. Then he settled William on his shoulders for the walk back to their home. Eden walked beside Jonas, her hand held securely in his. She felt the beautiful life they had built together all around them. The ghosts that had haunted Jonas were finally gone, and the walls around his heart were down. Now there was only this, a loving wife, an adoring son, and a wonderful life. They had built it all with nothing but faith and a stubborn refusal to give up. Together, they had transformed their fear into courage and turned simple survival into a life that was truly worth living. As they reached the house, Eden paused to look back at the beautiful hill. She imagined their family silhouetted against the sunset, bound by a powerful love. Thank you, Jonas said softly, seeming to read her mind. You taught me that love does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be present. You showed me that second chances are real and that life can be beautiful again. He pulled Eden close with his free arm. Thank you for being exactly who you are. We saved each other, Eden said with a smile. That is what love does. Inside their warm home, they put William to bed, watching him fall fast asleep. He trusted completely that he was safe and loved. I never thought I would have this again, Jonas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. A family, a future. a reason to hope. But you do, Eden said, moving to his side. You have all of it, now and forever. They left the nursery and made their way to their own room. As they got ready for bed, Eden felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She came to Iron Meadow with only a worn-out suitcase and a little bit of hope. She had faced rejection, but fought for her place here. In doing so, she discovered something more precious than security. She found love. It was a real life-changing love, built not on fancy words, but on small acts of kindness and believing in the best in each other. Jonas climbed into bed, pulling her close with a familiar warmth. His hand rested gently on her stomach, a silent hope for their future plans. I love you, he said, a nightly ritual that always felt new. I love you too, Eden replied, and she meant it more each time. Outside, the Hale Ranch was quiet beneath a sky full of stars. A family was healed, a home was restored, and a love had conquered fear. There was only peace, the deep satisfaction of two people who had found their home. Jonas remembered trying to send Eden away when she first arrived. He thought he was protecting them, hiding away in his isolated world. But Eden Blake had shown him that being safe is not the same as truly living. She taught him that great love is worth the risk of great loss, that reopening a broken heart is the most courageous act of all. He learned that love is not the absence of fear, but the courage to love anyway, and to walk through the hard times together. Jonas smiled in the darkness, listening to Eden's steady breathing beside him. This was peace. This was home. This was everything he thought he had lost. The mail-order bride he never asked for had given him more than he ever hoped for. She gave him back his heart and his future. In return, he gave her the only things that truly mattered, a place to belong and a promise to choose each other every single day. Together, they were writing a new story for their lives. It was a story of hope and resilience, of a love that refused to die. Their story would continue with every sunrise, written one day at a time. They had learned that the most powerful love is the kind that stays. The cowboy and the bride, who began with no expectations, had ended up with everything simply by finding each other. It was the messy, beautiful truth of two people building a life together. Their real story didn't end with a wedding or the birth of their son. It continued in every sunrise they shared and every challenge they faced. Their legacy lived in the sound of their children's laughter. On this night, Eden felt Jonas hold her as their son slept nearby. It was a perfect moment of peace, filled with hope for their future. They had earned this peace, building a new life from scratch. They had both survived the fires that tried to destroy them. They emerged from it all not perfect, but stronger and wiser. It felt like this was the plan for them all along. Two wounded souls who found each other when things seemed like an end. He was a man who had forgotten how to live. She was a woman who discovered love was the only safety she needed. Under the vast Montana sky, their story settled into a peaceful rhythm. They were finally living a life filled with cherished love. There was no more loneliness and no more doubt. Just a powerful love that taught them both what it truly meant to be alive.